And we're live. Good evening. And I don't know what type of a hello I'm going to do from now on, but let's just say that today was an interesting day where I was basically playing the role of Kenny Banya from Seinfeld. That was fun. So I hope you guys are all doing well this evening. I know we're a few minutes early, but welcome to Pontificating with Pete on Generational Change. Today has been a very busy day, and of course, Jen and I just got back from canvassing for a couple hours. And I will say this, and Jen will share her thoughts as well. When you start talking to people that are not just Debbie supporters, but people that are big fixtures within the Democratic Party, people that have been involved for years, people that have supported Debbie for years, see it as an opportune time to make a big change. When that starts to happen, that's a sign that this can happen. And I always believe in anonymity. I don't like talking about people specifically, but as I mentioned, there was somebody that we did speak with today in particular who 4 years ago, it would be probably a completely different conversation than what it was today. But sometimes things happen for a reason. And that's the beauty of politics. You just don't know how things are. TM, where the hell have you been? Haven't seen you in the longest time. Lord knows in Michigan, things are really getting interesting these days. But it's very nice to see you. And as I mentioned, the race is picking up, as are the races in the upper Midwest. But for those of you that are here, make sure that you do smash that like button and share. I know we're a few minutes early. Jen does have call time that she's got to take care of, but wanted to come on here and give you guys an update because today, in so many ways, was sort of a perfect contrast. There's so much to contrast between what Jen represents and what Debbie represents. And I think in terms of what unfolded over the last several hours is sort of it's emblematic of that desire for change and why it's so necessary. So our good friend is here. So let's bring her in without further ado. Jen Perelman, welcome to Pontificating with Pete on Generational.
Hello, how are you? Long time no see.
Hello. Hello. I don't know what I don't know where Billy Crystal stands, so I guess you could get away with that. Yeah, it's like you were saying, you want to know where everybody stands and you don't want to make presumptions about where their positions are. That's the toughest. That's probably the toughest part about this whole experience. And then wondering that if they like you, are they going to wonder if your position on Israel is not 100% where they stand and whether or not they're going to care enough to make that a distinction. But I think we've learned from enough people that even if they don't necessarily, unless they're hardened, like if that's like the issue, the only issue that matters to them, then yeah, it's possible that they're just gonna knee jerk to her. However, we've met enough of them where even if they don't agree with you on that issue, they're still going to vote for you anyway. And I think that that's a pretty big sign. So, what do you want to share with the audience from today? The experience of not just the canvassing, but the meetings we had, the people that we met, and then you contrast that with what our current representative was up to not too long ago.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see everyone. The difference between, you mean this year and in 20, when there's definitely been a shift. But today in particular was interesting. We definitely came across a voter that we would have categorized in the past as a Debbie voter. Just a very typical Debbie voter, and has voted for Debbie. And yet seemed very enthusiastic about the idea of a change and helping us. And I don't know that that's something we really came across in 20, where we saw it that often of a switch between those kinds of voters and people that appreciate what we're trying to do.
I think without question that this person's disposition was more of I've been involved with this for a long time. I'm content with the status quo when the status quo is delivering. The status quo is not delivering. In fact, the status quo is actually setting us back significantly. And she sized you up. I would assume that there was a comfort level knowing that you're from here, that you're from a similar background.
Well, yeah, we had to play Jewish geography. Peter always has to stand by and watch me play Jewish geography with everybody, and it really doesn't take very long. Like, it's really within a matter of like seconds that we figure out who's who. It's really very, it happens every time.
Yes, and I would definitely say that her comfort level with you was extraordinarily high, and that, as much as anything, with a classic, suburban upper middle class voter, is they have to feel comfortable with you. They have to like you, and that definitely came across very strong.
And they have to think. And this was interesting too, because she did specifically ask me, and this is something for the people that are just Democrats, right? There are the vote blue people, but some of those people, their priority while they are vote blue is preserving the party. And they recognize that people like Debbie are not helping preserve the party. They realize that the party needs help and it needs like rejuvenation. And so even people, I think that is one of the big differences is between 20 and now. I think I've noticed that there's more establishment Democrats that are willing to recognize that what we have right now is not even in the interest of their party.
No, it is definitely not in the interest of the party. We've obviously stated our positions very firmly regarding the party. This is not the party of labor anymore. This is the party of Wall Street and Silicon Valley. And even when you say that to a establishment Democratic voter, they don't really push back on it anymore. It's as if they've come to the realization that, yeah, this is really bad. I mean, obviously it translates all the way up to the top regarding what's happening with Biden right now. But when you get down to the local level, especially with how much somebody like this lady who has seen the shift in the state from what once was considered a lean blue swing state with the likes of Bob Graham have now come full circle to this is a safe red state. Yeah. And that, while you can say has to do with, yes, the demographic in the state has changed to a degree, but we have met tons of people, including the person that I talked about on the air the other night when we went out on Sunday to the Italian restaurant, and the gentleman who was serving us was like, oh, I left the Democrats a long time. This is serving. He's like, I don't want anything to do with them. They do not care about workers. And I'm thinking, it doesn't matter if the Republicans don't care about workers either. It's that there is no home. There is no place for them to go. So with that said, they meet somebody like you and they're like, well, if you're the person representing this area, I'll vote for you. Including a gentleman that we spoke to who was walking his dog. His attitude was, hey, listen, I ain't switching to Democrat, but I'll tell people to vote for you. I mean, I just want that.
Those are the people that as soon as they hear her name, he was one of those people that as soon as he heard her name, you could tell he's like, oh, anyone but her. Right. Yes. Like that. And there are those people. It's unfortunate when they're not registered as Democrats and they can't vote for me, but
yeah. And I don't get the vibe. Again, it's all a numbers game. And we had a few people that refused to talk to you, which I found to be very interesting.
Well, one of them I assessed, I think fairly was in a bad way.
Yeah. One I thought was correct. The other one was, you assume could be a neolib, and it's possible.
Yeah, it was definitely a very,
And so I would surmise that what I've gathered is the hardened Debbie people are still out there.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that a lot of them can be persuaded. And they can be persuaded because they've accepted the fact that this is not working anymore. And once you've gotten to the point where it's not working anymore, it's sort of like the inevitability of what's happening with Biden. It's the inevitability of what's happening with this system. Once people don't trust it, they're never going back to it. The change is inevitable because you can't present yourself as anything other than what you are. Everyone knows what Debbie is. Some better than others, but she represents the past in the worst kind of way. And someone looking at her would say, she's had her day. I think it's time for something else. And that's definitely the vibe that we're getting. And I think the
more so, yeah. I mean, definitely a lot more so, and definitely more so from people that are typically her people. Even
Yeah.
people that have been her voters have said, yeah, she has been there a really long time. People are not pushing back when we bring up the corruption stuff. I'm
Yeah.
finding there to be much less pushback on that, whereas we used to get people saying things like, well, they all do it, or yeah, that's just how it has to be done. Where I haven't gotten that this time.
Well, you've also said very often, and this is the unfortunate side of not just politics, but the nation we live in general, is most people, especially people who are in the upper side of society, they generally, some of them care, but do they care enough to actually push for change? And most circumstances, if things are going pretty well for them, they're not motivated enough to make that change. And one of the things that has changed significantly down here, which is probably the biggest issue of this election, if we're talking about what's happening locally, we have a housing crisis here. This is a serious problem. This is affecting everybody, including myself and Jen.
It's the number one. For people who don't seriously, and people know I'm always talking to voters, whether it's on the phone or canvassing. And I will say, other than the current issue with what's going on in Palestine, other than that, like if we take that off the table, the number one issue that I am getting is housing.
Yeah, housing is definitely the issue of our time. And so what is so telling to me is that we can bring this up with voters, and we know that that is a big deal. And so while we've put out things on social media, and obviously we are fortunate enough to have more financial capability this time around to be doing, polls and text blasts and things like that. And what you're noticing is that this is clearly getting to our current representative. And so evidently there was supposed to be a town hall a little bit earlier this evening. And I guess when they got wind to the fact that there was going to be constituents showing up.
Wait. Regular people were going to actually show up.
So Wasserman Schultz went to Miramar this evening to conduct a town hall with members that were focusing on HOA issues and overall housing. Now, this was not promoted, and this evidently was an annual event. This was basically, for all intents and purposes, it was at City Hall. So you would think that this was going to be a public event, that people were going to be able to show up and show out, like have an opportunity to speak to the Congresswoman and to the City Council of Miramar and voice their concerns.
Right.
Well, guess what? It turned into a closed meeting, closed event. And so how do I know that this is a public event? Well, I know people that called up both the commissioner's office and the Congresswoman's office, and it was initially said to be a public town hall.
Yes.
Well, that changed pretty quickly. And why would that change, Jen?
Well, Debbie never puts herself in a position where she has to answer unprompted questions. So if there's ever questions, you better believe they're planted. Everything has been vetted and planted. But so what they did was they had speakers. I don't mean like people speaking. I mean like literal physical stereotype speakers that they put towards the outside, I guess, so that the people that were standing outside that were not let in could hear. And I have not had a chance to hear the recording that someone did for us of what her comments. But basically what was supposed to be a public event got turned into a closed door boardroom only type of function. And she's going to keep having this over and over and over again. She cannot put herself in a position where any everyday people could potentially ask her a question, because she knows that people will question her conflicts of interest. She knows people will question where she gets her money.
And her money, this election cycle alone, is over $100,000 and counting from the real estate industry. South Florida is the second highest inflation market in the nation. People cannot afford rent.
No.
People cannot afford their mortgage.
Well, no, and more importantly, now people can't afford their assessments and people can't afford insurance. Correct. So we're having like a serious crisis here. She's taken 6 figures this cycle alone from real estate developers. Like,
and for those of you that know, 6 figures from one specific entity, that is a lot of money.
It is. And in one election cycle, yeah.
One election cycle. That's a lot of money.
It is.
The only there's only two conglomerates of corporate money that have given more to Wasserman Schultz this election cycle outside of real estate. One are law firms, which we all know is basically just a means for washing more corporate money and sending it into our coffers. And number one, of course, is the Israel lobby. So it's really not much of a surprise that this is the road that she's going down, because maybe
she has nowhere else to go.
Maybe she does get the sense that the walls are closing in. I'm not 100% sure, but it's at the point now where I'm almost thinking that if she thinks that she's ripe for the knockout, that she's just preparing for what she's going to do after the fact. I don't know.
I don't know. I think she's just her people. She's not going to ever put herself in a position to answer questions. Jimmy Zimzam's asking how long was she at that meeting. I'm not sure. They said it was going to go on, and I also do not know how many people were inside. We do not know the parameters of who was allowed in, but this was at a public at the Miramar Civic Center. Basically, it's the public town hall. And so it was meant to be a public meeting, and then people were not let in. So, and it wasn't because it was full, right? Like it was standing room only, so they couldn't let anyone else. That's not why.
No,
so
but imagine
I don't know.
But that's the whole thing. This representative, and I use that term loosely, it doesn't hold town halls, doesn't hold, forums. It's not like, she doesn't acknowledge that you and her have a race, or that there is a substantial amount of money in multiple corners that are supporting your efforts to unseat her. It's this whole idea of essentially running and hiding. This idea that it isn't really happening. But then again, I think she really recognizes her own weakness.
Well, look, she knows that she needs to be present because she knows that there is a primary happening, but she doesn't want anyone to know that there's a primary. So she's not acting like she's campaigning in any way, shape, or form. She's just being very present, which she usually isn't. And definitely not in the summertime.
We just got a text message from a friend who was at the event this evening and said she basically was campaigning for Joe most of the time that she spoke.
Okay, so that makes sense. That makes sense. Which was what you said she was basically doing at that meeting at the Civic Association in Liberia last time.
Well, that is also what our good friend T.M. Martin was saying when, acknowledging the fact that she was on TV the other night. And of course, what was she doing? She was going on there to defend Joe and talk about how terrible Trump is. It's like, again, this doesn't solve anything.
No, and it's not working. And I really have to, and again, and I've said this repeatedly, the only constituents that are most concerned about Trump are privileged white people. Yeah. Everyone else, that's not their concern. They actually are concerned with how they're going to make ends meet.
Of course. And so here, we have a serious problem with trying to come to some semblance of a stable circumstance here in South Florida. There are so many problems, but the real estate problem is a huge one. And one of the biggest reasons why it's a huge problem is we do have this corporate housing crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who is aware that these mega corporations are literally coming in here, again, and I hate the fact that RFK is the only person who's talking about it, but when private equity giants have seeped into our real estate market and can own 60% of our single family homes in this country by the end of the decade, it's not a joke. It's really not. Come down here and see how bad it is.
It's a big problem. And in places like Florida that are very tourist oriented places where you have short-term rentals and a lot of people that it's cost prohibitive for working people to live here. Let me tell you something. You saw what happened in Barcelona, right? Did you see that whole thing about what happened in Barcelona where they were throwing things at the Airbnb people? They're like kicking them out. Barcelona is not going to be allowing Airbnbs anymore. They're actually trying to protect their people from predators. And I don't mean people staying in Airbnbs as predators. I mean property predators.
Yeah. And that of course is the problem because there's no control. And the problem also is that when they buy these homes, they are doing it in cash, and they don't care if these properties are being filled with tenants. What they care about is the asset. The asset's more valuable in some cases than even the rent. And that completely skews an entire market. But you're going to get to a point where who the hell is going to afford or justify the affordability of living down here? Well, people with a lot of money. But you can't.
I still don't understand where all these people are coming from. Now, A lot of it, like people, if you don't know from like down here, constant high rises and buildings and developments, constant. And most of them are cost prohibitive to what I would think is 90% of the people. So I don't understand how they're going to be able to, or the truth is, I don't even think they care about filling them up. It's almost like they just want to not be the last man standing holding the bag.
Yeah.
Because
and
you've got a lot of foreign investors. You have a lot of foreign investors, but for the most part, regular people can't afford to buy in any of these. I don't understand who's going to, live in these places.
Yeah, and TM is right. It's like, if you think this type of rhetoric is what is going to, but again, she doesn't have anything, so she's not a good example.
She has to sell Joe because she can't sell herself.
Yeah. And here's the thing, Andrew is right. Real estate is the best commodity you can invest in overall. And there's many different types of real estate, but unfortunately, it's becoming almost impossible. And without naming anybody, but somebody that we know that's in Democratic Party politics down here, and puts out a Facebook message saying the stock market's the highest it's ever been. All you guys with retirement money are doing great. And I'm thinking 90% of all stocks, all stock shares in this country, 90% of them are owned by 10% of the actual investors. So touting the stock, I got sick of it when Trump did it, and I'm sick of hearing, especially with somebody like Biden, who claims to be for working people, which of course isn't the case. And so real estate is becoming the same problem. Who the hell can afford it? At least in desirable areas where people actually want to live. That's a huge problem. It's a huge problem here. And what Debbie is doing is absolutely downright disgusting. There is one other thing that I want you to cover before you go, because I know you got to get on the dialer. But this, to me, is a very important story. Those of you who have been paying attention, there is what I do not call an anti-Semitic group. It's actually not a stop anti-Semitism group. It's actually we're pushing anti-Semitism group, because that's what they ultimately end up doing. Another Delta employee wearing a Palestinian pin is causing a stir, this time on an Atlanta to Fort Lauderdale flight. You know what's interesting about these two flights of Delta Airlines? Both of them were flown into South Florida. What a shock. And so, of course, they had somebody on the plane, one which was flying into West Palm Beach, the other into Fort Lauderdale, where we are. And sure enough, it became this whole, they're wearing a Palestinian flag. That offends me. In fact, that's a terrorist flag, Jen. They can't wear that. Forget freedom of speech, because who the hell cares, right? Hey, Delta, did you add Palestine as a new? Hey, at least they said Palestine. I thought Palestine didn't exist.
I mean, this is just so ridiculous at this point, but I kind of understand it from this perspective. Now, whenever I see the Israeli flag, it makes my skin crawl. So I kind of get that. Like, I totally understand it. And when I see an Israeli flag, like, I do think of like a terrorist organization. So I understand the feeling of seeing an emblem and finding it to be very distasteful. I feel like every single time I see an Israeli flag.
And that is their actions, because these two flight attendants who flew on Delta, you should see the tweet that Delta had to delete. They fired these people for wearing the Palestinian flag, all because of this pro-Israel group who's like, oh my God, they're wearing a Palestinian flag. That's terrorist-like behavior. Like,
yeah.
To even understand that they think that the definition of terrorism is just somebody who is a bomber. Like, that's all they think of.
No. That they think the definition of terrorism is someone who's a brown person and is a bomber.
Well, that's true. Well, that's a whole other story.
Because they don't necessarily consider white people that commit violence terrorists. So yeah, I think there's that.
And that to me just speaks to an even bigger problem here. I hope, against all hope, that these flight attendants that were simply expressing, and these are Americans, they were expressing their freedom of speech rights, which they have, that they sue the hell out of the airline.
Now, if I will say this, if the airline has a policy wherein you cannot wear anything other than their insignia, okay? And then these people were violating that code, then they need to be like, I don't know, at least told you can't do this. Like you could be, I don't have a problem with that if it's across the board. But if you have people wearing other types of pins and then you went after them for content, that's a different story. Also, firing them is ridiculous. And by the way, I do believe that if they would sue under that they would be able to get their jobs back and get reparations for being, I mean, you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, but this also speaks to an issue that I think you can speak well to, more so than most. Whether they know it or not, and I think they do, because I think this is all about money and power. This is not about Jewish people and protecting them. This creates more anti-Semitism than it eliminates.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Because it just makes it look like Jewish people are just a whiny bunch of bitches that we just don't like we can't handle feeling uncomfortable or seeing something that we're just not completely okay with. Like, it's just not a good look. And it aligns Jewish people with violating free speech, with this idea of suppressing speech.
I believe they are, Double K. I'm pretty sure that they're unionized. Most airline workers are in the CWA, so I would imagine, and this is something that Sarah Nelson, I would assume, is probably, if she hasn't already, put out a statement regarding this. But this is bad, bad. And it's such a, of all the things, like, let's just assume for a moment that there have been circumstances that people have worn certain things that they don't agree with. It's like, Wasserman Schultz goes on CNN the other day and, of course, is wearing the yellow ribbon. It's like, that's okay. That's acceptable. But if somebody does this is completely out of bounds.
Here's the thing. It would be perfectly acceptable if they were wearing Israeli flags. See, that's my question. That's my question. If there were flight attendants that put on the Israeli flag, like the other day in the parking lot near my house, everyone where I go to Pilates, there was a car driving through that parking lot with the two flags in the back window, like they do for your sporty games, but the two Israeli flags hanging out their windows and driving around like the parking lot like that. And I'm just wondering if those flight attendants were wearing pins of the Israeli flag, if it would have gotten the same, because if that's the case and they just have a policy against wearing any non-airline insignia, I have no problem with that. But termination of employment seems a little severe.
And what ends up happening is you get these accounts that will harass the hell out of Delta and tag them constantly and basically tell them this will not stop until you fire these people.
Exactly. They're bullies. They're bullies. That's how they do everything.
And that, of course, will, have to stop. But will it stop? I think it will definitely change significantly if somebody like you were having a platform the size of a federal legislator. That can make a big difference. The Delta AFA Steering Committee sent the following open letter to our leadership team demanding decisive and public action in support of Delta flight attendants. Good. Listen, you know what? Maybe some of them will walk off the job. You never know. They'll just be like, all right, well, you're going to do that to us? We'll leave.
You guys all talking about the yellow ribbon. It's old school. The yellow ribbon always has to do with putting it out for people to return home that are serving in the military. So it's for any conflict. So it isn't just from the troops after 9/11. In fact, there's a song called "Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree," right? So like it's an old tradition that I think probably went back to like World War I or II. Like, it's old. But it definitely, and yes, she is most likely wearing it in reference to the hostages that she somehow considers still being held hostage.
186,000 that we know of. Thanks, Debbie. On July 9th, 2024, Delta Airlines official X account responded to a post of two pictures taken of Delta flight attendants without their consent while performing their duties wearing small Palestinian flag pins, as has been the practice of celebrating diverse heritage of crew for decades. The official Delta account initially responded, "Nothing to worry, this is being investigated already," and subsequently added, "I hear you, as I'd be terrified as well." Both responses are now deleted, but it's the internet, so it never goes away. The Delta AFA Steering Committee underscores that these incidents reflect a repeated failure by Delta management to stand up for flight attendants. It is deeply troubling to publicly witness Delta seemingly affirm bigoted and inflammatory comments targeting any individuals on the basis of their nationality violates anti-discrimination laws is antithetical to Delta's stated commitment to inclusivity and respect and encourages a hostile work environment. You know, if you look at the 2 flight attendants that were subsequently fired for
Stop saying subsequently.
Subsequently. All right, I said it wrong. Sorry. They could be Palestinian. They
could be Latina. They could be anything. Yeah. They could be Italian. I don't know. Yeah. What does it matter? What if they're Greek?
They want a public apology. They want protection for crew members and social media moderation. You see, and that's good, Colin. And see, this is the problem that you guys have to remember, and this is the key here. Because Israelis have so much political and financial power, they can basically tell Delta that we have X amount of stock and we're going to dump it if you don't do what we say. So this is financial power more than anything else. If Delta fears that they can withstand a $10-20 million lawsuit from a couple of flight attendants wearing the Delta pin or wearing the Palestinian flag, they're willing to do that, knowing that the consequences of challenging the Israel lobby is not worth their fight. And that's how they assess it. That's what I believe. I could be wrong.
It's always going to be whatever is in the best interest of the shareholders, right? So whatever is going to cost them the least amount of money. Is that lawsuits by flight attendants, or is that going to be loss of business from people calling them anti-Semitic? I, at this point, think for the most part, people are over that. And I think a lot of what we're seeing online what looks like that are bots and they're paid people. I do not believe that it's authentic and organic. I just don't.
This is extortion. I agree with, hey, I'm going to play some games. This is extortion on an unfathomable scale. I agree. Well, we know you got to hit the phone, but let everybody know how they can help you if they want to help.
If you don't say this every time you go live.
It's your chance to have the floor.
Okay, everyone, if you do not know, I am running for Congress in Florida's 25th district down here. If you have not signed up to be a volunteer, please do so. gen2024.org. And there's lots of things that people can do to help, whether you live here or not. If you are local, come out and canvass. The more, the merrier. And that's about it.
Spectacular.
Let's see what time it is. Yeah, see, West Coast dialing time starts. Bye, all.
Good to see you. Adios. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. It certainly was a good conversation. I was contemplating whether I was going to be able to go live tonight. There's just so much going on, but I did not want to neglect my wonderful audience. Indeed, Steve, go Jen. And of course, I would be amiss not to say to our wonderful people, Double K, welcome to the YouTube membership. I really appreciate it. And of course, Teresa, pontificating with Pete, has been killing it, Jen. Thank you very, very much. And an exceptionally generous contribution. It really means a lot. You guys are fantastic. It really does mean a lot, but we have some things to cover and we're going to. So, I mean, what the hell? Politics ends at 8 p.m. Everyone knows that. That's good. So, all right, look, I didn't watch a lot of the presser. I saw the things that I needed to say, but the message that is going out regarding President Biden is that he is still in the fight, and because he didn't have a disastrous, presser, that should be enough to keep him in the race. You be the judge. We'll see.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
I didn't realize that Ukraine now belongs to Russia. So maybe it's true. Maybe Zelensky really isn't alive anymore. And, now Putin is the president of Ukraine. I mean, that'd be news to us, but, it's just one gaffe. But there's more. I don't want to be overly critical of the president because we all make mistakes from time to time, but it gets better.
Wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president. I think she was not.
Well, I mean, look, Vice President Trump, that's not good And yes, I know Double K, he did correct himself, but you have to, here's the problem that Democrats are still making, and they're making them all the time. This is not a primary election. It's not a state election. What it is it's a national election, and the majority of voters now identify as independent. An independent voter is going to hear this and see this, and their attitude is going to be, I am not going to support this. This is bad. And I don't trust that the president is in control. There's nothing wrong with that assessment. Now, you can say that you're going to support him, and that's fine. I believe in the freedom of choice in every way. If you want to support the president, that's perfectly fine, if that's what you choose to do. I made my position pretty clear. And it doesn't have to do with gaffes, but these gaffes are concerning for a lot of people.
Not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one.
Well, again, how you confuse Trump and Harris, I don't know, but he found a way to do it. And I think that people, again, have a right to say, this doesn't look good. This, again, it's not a little mistake. It's significant. It is. You can't sweep this under the rug. And who's to say how much worse this is going to get? And I've been saying it for a long time. I do not believe, and this is my opinion, I could be wrong, but if I were a betting man, I would not bet that President Biden is going to be alive on January 20th, 2029. That's my opinion. And you could say I'm wrong, and that's fine. But that's the risk that's at stake right now. And it's a big one. We'll continue.
Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
The limits I've acknowledged I have?
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was, instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff, instead of starting a fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home at 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, and if you look at my schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign, in the debate, I mean, my schedule has been full bore. I've done, where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his.
You see, here's the problem. And this is a lesson in politics that everyone either understands or will ultimately understand. If you're constantly on defense, you're losing. That's how it works. Trump isn't even addressing this. Trump hasn't even come out and made a joke yet about the president saying Vice President Trump. I'm sure he'll come up with something clever. He always does. And MSNBC, of course, put out Biden on VP Harris doesn't address the fact that he said VP Trump. It is what it is. There have been numerous reports that he does have trouble in terms of his vitality past a certain time. You know, the man is in his 80s. That's not unheralded. And you're asking this frail old man to be the leader of the free world, where, to be honest, when it comes to being the president, you're really not allowed to get a lot of sleep. You're just not. The job ages you exponentially. And I don't think there really is a way that he can answer the question without it being used against him in some way.
Work hard before he hits the ball. I mean, look, he's done virtually nothing.
And again, you could say all of those things about the president or the former president, and it all may be true, but it's not giving confidence to the people in question. And this isn't even addressing some of the more pressing issues that we're dealing with here. You know, that's a huge misnomer. You know, that is a big deal. We have acknowledged the fact that while some of these things I think are overrated, I do think that Biden has put decent people into the NLRB. I think that does matter. But remember, we're assessing the pros and the cons here. And I don't doubt for a second that somebody like Trump will be much worse for the NLRB than somebody like Biden. But again, when you have so many holes in the bucket, you plug one and another sinks. So what do you think is going to happen? If there was reason to believe that we were heading in that right direction, that would be one thing, but we're not. And that's not even addressing the genocide, which he absolutely is helping facilitate. We'll continue.
This concludes.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference.
I mean, I don't understand. That is a terrible screen capture of showing that spot. Didn't mean to do that, but it happens. And, you know, you're right. Andrew's right. It's not about Biden versus Trump yet. It's Biden versus a better Dem candidate. The convention has not happened yet, and the convention this time is happening very late. It's happening near the end of August. In fact, the convention begins right around Jen's election against Wasserman Schultz. So it's very unique. And if you're waiting until then, and you're going to make a switch basically 2.5 months prior to Election Day, that's too late. Like, it really is. At that point, it's too late. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. All I'm really concerned about right now is what we can control here in South Florida, because Jen has a shot to win this race. Florida is going to go red. I'm pretty sure everybody recognizes that. At least I hope they do. But I think the ability to see the future through the lens of changing something locally and having it turn into something bigger is really where our impact can be the biggest, can really be felt the most. See, Biden ain't going anywhere. He's the nominee. I want an open convention. And then, of course, you have the polls. Some of the polls don't lie. It gives a strong consensus against Biden. It's true. And as I said, if you're playing defense, you're losing. That's how politics works. And at the same time, we're looking around at this race and we're really being distracted from a lot of the bigger problems that are going on, including getting confronted at, I know that this was Code Pink, and I know that Code Pink had their event today. Not Code Pink, but this was like a defense contractor event that was in DC, and it got blown up by the Code Pink ladies. So we'll see what happened.
And bombs to Israel when we need to be investing in healthcare, in housing, in education. The future.
I want you to take a look at this guy right here on the right. I want you to take a look at that smug smirk on that guy's face. So this is GE Aerospace. Defense contractors, stop making a killing off of killing. Disrupted GE Weapons Manufacturers Future of Defense Conference. You know, you wonder what these guys talk about in these meetings. But when you're getting paid so much money, that's when you can make faces like this jack off right here. Not a care in the world, not a concern for how many people are being killed or how long. Again, this war is profit. That's what it's about. And some people are completely devoid of any form of empathy. They are total psychopathic individuals, and this guy is no exception. He's sitting there, and you're going to see how this lady gets treated even further.
Of defense means there's no future of the planet. It means there's no future for Palestinians. It means there's no future for people in the global south that continue to be obliterated by people like you, the defense contractors, who are making a killing off of killing. You all in this room are making a killing off of killing.
Okay, I gotta. If that guy's face doesn't say it all, I don't know what does. It's almost as if to say, yeah, I know I shouldn't be here, but it's paying me a lot of money. I'm sorry, but I want to live the good life. And if a few people have to die because of me, that's okay. If it's not me, somebody else will do it. You know, kind of like that Brooklyn guy, the heavyset Brooklyn guy who went to the Palestinians' home and is like, hey, if I don't take this home, somebody else is going to take it. This guy's looking at you thinking, I think people are going to be upset if they know that I'm here, but it's my job. I got to make money. I'm making a lot of it. I really do think that it takes a certain type of person to know what's going on, know what the score is, and then pretend like it's not happening. Because that, in essence, is what they're trying to do. I just don't know how they can pretend anymore. I just don't. What is there to pretend? Remember, 186,000 dead Palestinian civilians is a conservative estimate. And it's only getting worse. Because remember, you're talking about famine, disease. This is going to kill a hell of a lot more than even the bombs are going to kill. All perpetrated by an ethno-cleanse. And everyone here that is a part of this is playing a part. At least our representative is out front in her support of the genocide. She stands side by side with Bibi. She doesn't care. But some people, like this guy right here, he's given that ushka look of, shit, this is going to end up on the internet. All of my friends and family are going to know I'm sitting in on a defense contractors meeting. Yeah, too bad, pal. And if somebody calls you a genocider, well, that's the price you're going to have to pay to take that blood money. I know I couldn't take it. I couldn't live with myself. I guess you can. Congratulations. At least you're not making a smug smirk of a face like that jackass on the stage.
You're selling weapons to Israel to kill Palestinians, and people go weapons.
I really don't know how people can live with themselves, but maybe that is the difference when it comes to cognitive and physiological development. People are accepting of this because they see it as a means to an end. But it is necessary to disrupt these events as often as possible. Because even if it doesn't change today, it's going to change eventually. People do not want this anymore. They don't want this death and destruction. It is sick beyond words. And maybe it will finally usher in that change that we desperately need. But that is why getting Jen to Capitol Hill is so important. We do need that voice. We need somebody who isn't going to be afraid, who is just going to say, look, I'm here for 2 years. If that's all I'm here for, then I got to make the most of it. They're going to come for her with everything they got because she is a voice that is not going to play ball when it comes to just falling in line. And that's not what we need right now. We need to make a stand. And one thing I do want to bring up, and Colin, I don't know if there's anything that you want to prop up regarding Project 2025. I know that there is sort of a constitution, if you will, of 2025. It's basically the outline of what the plans are and what they're looking to do. From where I stand, it's one of those things that is only possible, like Donald Trump, as the president of the free world, at the United States and the leader of the free world. The only way that happens is if the system is broken. That's it. There's no other way. Just like I was saying a little earlier about how people were bragging about the stock market being high. I mean, have you looked around? Who in the hell is benefiting from the stock market being high? You have the haves and the have-nots, and that has shrunk so tight. You can't even see it anymore. It's that bad. That's what's happened. It's bad. And we'll get to 2025 in a minute, but what I must cover is, we talk about how things are falling apart in this country. Bill Maher, who just never ceases to amaze, had Tulsi Gabbard and Chris Matthews on his panel the other night to talk about Julian Assange. Well, as you can imagine, this did not sit well with me, and it wouldn't sit well with you either. So here's what he had to say.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Oh, good. Let's get to this. What?
Oh, it's good.
Me too. Has pled guilty to espionage and secured his freedom. I didn't see this coming, by the way. I didn't think he'd ever get out. What will his legacy be? Yes.
Time served. Time served. He served 6 years, and that's what he's getting.
No, but they're talking about his legacy, and that's what I want to know. Is he a heroic crusader exposing government lies, or he is a reckless traitor who was endangering our freedom?
Yeah, I mean, it depends who you ask. I think that the more people have been, I think that he is an example of his prosecution. The charges against him are one of the biggest attacks on freedom of the press that we've seen and freedom of speech. So,
Tulsi, say what you want about her, and she has gone down the path of careerism, and that is all that she cares about. But she has always been right on Assange, and I appreciate that. There isn't a lot there that I can say, but the one thing I can definitively say when it comes to political issues is I don't believe in the tribalism bullshit. I don't have to support Tulsi Gabbard to say that she is absolutely right on a crucial issue when it is absolutely necessary. And in this case, first of all, the whole framing of the way that Maher is throwing it out there is so despicable, as if to suggest that there was anything that Julian Assange did that would require the word traitor. Well, now, first of all, to be a traitor, you actually have to be an American citizen, and he's not. So going down that role, that path, and yes, hey, I'm going to play some games. Tulsi's stance on Palestine is disgusting, and that's what happens when you basically become bought out, and that's what happened to Tulsi. Now, for whatever reason, she has maintained a very straight line when it comes to constitutional rights, specifically as it pertains to freedom of speech. That's correct. We'll continue.
Wow, I thought you would go the other way.
no, not at all.
I think Ellsberg looks good right now.
What?
Daniel Ellsberg looks very good right now, and what he did. And the Pentagon Papers was about how the Kennedy administration and Johnson administration, not Nixon, what they did to lie about the war.
Well, I don't know all the particulars. I mean, you'd have to really spend months and months going through the amount of stuff he put out. But in general, I think the world's full of bad people. Like I was saying to Ray, the world's full of bad people. And yeah, I think sometimes you need somebody to put the hammer down. I think Obama said this, and just say, I'm sorry, you can't expose our secret agents.
Does this guy work for the NSA now? Like, I can't really tell anymore. I don't know what Bill Maher's shift, where it happened, like what started him going in this direction of I am going to literally kowtow to the deep state. But this is so disgusting on so many levels. I've made the joke that I think it's the glasses. I think he turned into somebody else when he started wearing those heavy brim glasses. Maybe they're pressing his brain down too hard. I don't know. But he's up here saying that the prosecution of free speech is okay because we have to protect our agents. And the reason why we talk about this is because if you ever look at the comments on YouTube, they're fully on board with what he's saying. There is this contingent of these types. It's a big part of the problem. That's the part, Henry, that always seems to get lost on people. It wasn't just Vietnam. It was Cuba. It was Russia. Maybe at one time Kennedy was thought to be a hawk, or may have projected to be one, but ultimately decided that, no, I'm not going down that path. And if it costs me my life, if that's the price I have to pay, then so be it. Maybe he suspected it, maybe he didn't. But he did what he needed to do. And, you know, and that's the thing that Andrew's right about that people tend to forget. The 2016 Democratic primary was rigged. And there has never been retribution for what happened there. That is how we ended up with Donald Trump. That is how you ended up with a completely bought off Supreme Court that answers to the Heritage Foundation. It started there. Trump seized the opening. And he did it spectacularly. And he became the president of the United States. Because Debbie Wasserman Schultz rigged the primary for Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. And Julian Assange exposed it. Remember what Hillary said? Can't we just drone bomb this guy? I can imagine what Debbie was probably saying in private. Wasn't too good. Let's see what else Mr. Maher has to say.
And we have to think of our security first. Yeah. I mean, yes, I'm sure the government does some gnarly things, but I don't like this. I don't like a guy who pretends that he's the patriot when it's the spies out there who are protecting this country, not Julian.
Okay, so we already got the cackle of neo-libs that are about to clap for this statement, but how about this? Actually, it was Benjamin Franklin. It was Ben Franklin who said, those who would give up liberty for security deserve neither. So Bill Maher is admitting that your liberty is not as important as my security. So I'm willing to give it up both ways. Pretty clear. But remember, when you're a 100 millionaire and you live in the Hollywood Hills, you know, your assessment of the world is extremely narrow, and that's being nice. I could say a lot worse, but that's where he's at.
Assange. Because there are people who want to destroy this country. That's true. And there are people who are plotting to get nuclear weapons and all the rest of it. And this guy is not the one who made sure that we have not really been attacked since 9/11.
Okay, he is so far gone at this point. And that is really what it comes down to. Like I said, I don't know where Maher's shift came from, but it's pretty clear that it was a big one. And like I said, I can remember when he had Bernie on his show and said, I want to help your campaign. I want to see you get the nomination. I want to see you be the next president. If the Bernie Sanders of 2016 was running right now, you think Bill Maher would ever have anything to do with him? Whatever the shift was, whatever happened, clearly he felt, and maybe, just maybe, part of it's a facade. Maybe part of it is just the fact that his medium is dying and he feels that this is the only direction he could go in to salvage what's left of this operation because he really enjoys it. He was really popular at one time, especially when he was doing politically incorrect. But those days are gone. They're long gone. And most people are tired of him. And he's aging like a dirty old man. He really is. The idea, first of all, the fact that he's out there in just a black shirt, he's not even in a suit. Remember, Bill prided himself on looking like a professional when he was on that stage. He was always wearing a suit and tie. Now he's sitting up there like he just got out of a workout. It's just not that important to him. He's comfortably smug, is the way that I would look at it. And so we will conclude tonight with a very important topic that I know a lot of people are concerned about. Project 2025 is not a joke. It is definitely the brain trust of the most hardened economic, and there's a difference, but economic libertarian conservatives in this country. And building now for a conservative victory through policy, personnel, and training. So Project 2025 is very real. And the whole idea is to basically do everything in their capacity, which has always been the goal of the likes of Grover Norquist and the Koch brothers, which is to eliminate the administrative state, to basically have their economic libertarian wet dream. And Colin, I guess if there are certain points that we can hit here, I know that there was it is not enough for conservatives to win elections if we're going to rescue the country from the grip of the radical left. We need a governing agenda and the right people in place and ready to carry out agenda on day one of the next conservative administration. It's the goal of the 2025 presidential transition project. Project will build on 4 pillars that will collectively pave the way for an effective conservative administration. Keep going. Oh, if Sam Harris loves it, then I definitely don't love it. Keep going. Keep going. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, keep going. No, scroll up for a sec. Scroll for 1 sec. There was one paragraph there that I think might have been read. Okay. The 2025 presidential transition project is being organized by the Heritage Foundation. Of course, if anybody knows anything about the Heritage Foundation, it may be the most well-funded Republican, well, not even Republican. It's just the most well-funded conservative think tank in the country, and builds off Heritage's longstanding mandate for leadership, which has been highly influential for presidential administration since the Reagan era. Shocking. Well, that's really where things started to go awry. Is there not like an explanation of all the policy, or yeah, that's a policy?
It looked like they're
There should be like a listing on Twitter. I know that I've seen graphics of people specifically putting up Project 2025, and it just says
their website. If you look, it says 4th pillar. So it looks like they deleted the first 3 on their website, but I'll try and find them.
It's interesting. Well, I don't know if they feel that that's going to cost them politically or not. And good point, Tony, about Bill Maher. In 2013, he defended NSA wiretapping. So maybe Bill Maher really has always sucked. Just didn't realize it as much. Now, as I've said before, I'm of 2 minds when it comes to Project 2025. There are the minds that think that the world is coming to an end, and then there are those who think that this is completely overblown. I think because of where our country is headed at this point, there is no denying that so much of what we would like to have in this country is being destroyed because corporate special interests have captured our government. The government doesn't function, not that it ever really functioned as well as it could have, but when you are completely corporate captured like our Congresswoman is, it's never going to function properly because you're not answering to everyday people. So if there is okay, so it is, yeah, it's First Pillars of the 900-page policy book that lays out an overhaul of the federal government called Mandate for Leadership 2025, The Conservative Promise. Builds on the first published in January of 81, which is what Reagan basically rode the wave on when he came into power. And the whole idea is that the government, and as I've always said, the 9 scariest words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I am here to help. And so This is not really saying anything. Again, like I said, there's like a list. There should be tweets online specifically talking about it. Project 2025 Twitter. Yeah, there's definitely explanations as to what this is all about. Okay, so this is it. If you go to Colin, just I'm gonna, all right, pull this off. I'm gonna add this. So this is coming directly from their page. And so basically what it's explaining here is this idea of end no-fault divorce. I'm not 100% sure what that means. I'm being honest. I should know what that means, but I don't. Complete ban on abortions without exceptions. Obviously, that's bullshit. Ban contraceptives. Again, ridiculous. Again, this is all Christian right bullshit. Additional tax breaks for corporations in the one. Well, of course that'll happen. Higher taxes for the working class. Well, listen, someone's paying for it. If the rich aren't paying, then someone else is. Elimination of unions and worker protections. Yes, that has always been the plan. Is, you know, who needs workers' rights? That's why we have right to work laws. And I've always maintained the biggest failure of the Biden administration was to not pass the PRO Act in these first 100 days, which would have eliminated right to work laws in the United States. Raise the retirement age. Many people have debated that one for a while. I think 65 is fine. I understand that I'm not going to, that's not a sword I'm going to fall on. Cut Social Security, cut Medicare. Again, everyone always talks about cutting Social Security and Medicare, and yet when it really comes time to really cut it, it doesn't happen. And the Affordable Care Act, again, if you're going to replace it with single payer, fine with that, but what are you replacing it with? That never comes up. It's never what they're going to replace it with. Raise prescription drug prices. Yeah, I would need to see specific on that. No fault divorces when neither partner has committed infidelity. I think similar to big ticket crimes like murder. Interesting. Oh, so they're basically saying that you can't get divorced unless there's something sinister that you freaking religious, you nut jobs. Eliminate the Department of Education. Listen, I think there's a lot of problems with the Department of Education. There is a lot of corruption in that particular government agency, guys. There's a reason why there's a lot of people who do want to eliminate the Department of Education. It is very corrupt. But that doesn't mean that we need to turn everything private, because that's always the goal. The whole point of ending the Department of Education is to turn everything into privatization, which of course is not the answer. Use public taxpayer money for private religious, again, separation of church and state. Teach Christian religious beliefs in schools. Well, they're already doing that in Alabama and Louisiana, but the fact of the matter is that's only going to fly in the Bible Belt. It's not going to fly anywhere else. It already does fly there. They just want to make it official. End free and discounted school lunch programs. Man, you really hate the poor, don't you? End civil rights and DEI protections in government. Well, that's a loaded part, and we'll have to get to that at some point. Ban African American and gender studies in all levels of education. Freedom of education. Learn what the hell you want. It's not. That's why we have public school. In private, you can do whatever you want. In public, no. Ban books and curriculum about slavery. See, they've done that. They're doing that here in Florida. Like, that's a thing where they're actually trying to take slavery out of textbooks, which is just. I mean. It is so preposterous that they're going down that road. But talk about not needing to find a better hobby. And climate protections. Well, we've already done that. You don't need Project 2025 to end climate protections. You don't need that at all. Biden is even worse on the environment than Trump is, and that is provable. Increase Arctic drilling. That's really intelligent. Oh God, we will not be satisfied until we kill everybody. But remember, you can't eat money and you can't drink oil. Deregulate big business and the oil industry. You've already deregulated it. Promote and expedite capital punishment. It's like, hey, we can't kill fast enough. Let's kill them more. End marriage equality. Again, another hyper-religious indoctrination bullshit scheme. Condemn single mothers while promoting only traditional faith. Defund the FBI and Homeland Security. You know, the funny thing is you get a lot of people on board with that one. Use the military to break up domestic protests. Insanity. But I wouldn't put anything past anybody. Mass deportation of immigrants and incarceration in camps. Yeah, I can see you doing that. End birthright citizenship. Why? Ban Muslims from entering the country. No bigotry there. Eliminate federal agencies like the FDA. Well, it's not to say that the FDA, again, much like the Department of Education, the FDA is completely and utterly corrupt. The EPA, pretty bad too. So you're going to eliminate these federal agencies rather than completely gut them and make them right. Instead, let's just eliminate them altogether and turn this into as much of a libertarian wet dream as you possibly can, and continue to pack the Supreme Court and lower courts with right-wing judges. Well, hey, listen, I have been saying this for the longest time. For the longest time. When it comes to Justices Thomas and Alito, if Biden gets in again, they will hang around for another 4 years. If Trump gets in, they will retire and they will be replaced. And that's how this game is played. And that is Project 2025. Is there anything that we're reading here that isn't anything different than what has always been the most hardened, you know, the brain trust of Grover Norquist I believe Grover Norquist is the Cato Institute, if I remember correctly. But this is what they've always wanted. This has always been the plan. This isn't a new thing. This is just where we've ended up. And the reason we get to this point, more than any other reason, is because we have a broken economic and political system and people are desperate. And even if they are somewhat aware that this is going to potentially make things worse, and likely would, when you have nothing to lose, that is a dangerous place to be. And we've got tens of millions of people in this country today that don't have anything to lose. That's a failed system. And that's why drastic change is necessary. Truly missed the lives lately, although I have listened later. Thank you. I miss the voices, but you're using your own voice, and that is my favorite anyway. Love you, Teresa, and I appreciate that. There's always time to have fun, but there's not a hell of a lot of fun right now. And in some ways, Commie John is correct. It's just another version of Vote Blue no matter who. And the reason it's a version of Vote Blue no matter who is simply this. Okay, so you're presenting Project 2025. What is your Project 2025? If this is the line items that the conservative right is going to try to push through in the next Trump administration, what are you offering as a counter to that? Where is your line items? We are going to do this if we're in control. You know why you don't see it? Because they both share the same donor class. That's the reason. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the system is breaking at the seams every minute of every day. That's it. So we can sit here and talk about Project 2025, and yeah, most of it sucks. What are you offering as an alternative? Nothing. You don't offer anything. Just keep us in power because we have nothing to offer you because we're just as bought off as they are. The American people are not buying it anymore. So you better offer something or this is going to get a hell of a lot worse. That's all I'm saying. Cannot thank you guys enough for obviously being here and supporting the channel. It means everything. The word continues to spread, and that is how we are going to help our friend get to the U.S. Congress. And then we'll really have somebody who's fighting for us, not somebody who's out there saying, I think the president is doing a hell of a job and we don't have to ask for any concessions and support him. Oh, and by the way, he's basically incapable of doing the job and he's still facilitating a genocide, but support him anyway. No, you need somebody who is actually going to push back. That's what needs to happen. And while I do think that that is a sort of a wishful thinking circumstance in the interim, it's amazing how much can change for the better just with the narratives that can change if somebody like Jen had power of the federal seat. That's why we have to work together to get her there. It's not everything we want, but it's a start. Kami John, Hydra Operative, Jimmy Zimzam, CA, Henry Kajawa, Ray J, Tony DeMeo, Nelson Ortega, Charissa. You don't like my music? Hey, I'm going to play some games. Yes, but no. Suma Sterling, I guess is what your name is now. I know you've been changing it, so I want to make sure that I'm up to speed. Jennifer Perelman, decided to get it on the chat. Steve Grossman, appreciate you being here. TM Martin, and you are absolutely right. Sandra was very smart to not take one step on our soil. That would not have ended well. Donald James, Bilbo Baggins, good name. Happy to have you here. Who else we got? Who else came in tonight? We had a nice chat here. And a nice chat and a good conversation with Jen. This is a last-minute decision to go live. Glad you guys showed up. Campaign is busy. Sable, good to see you. Double K, appreciate you being here. Who else we got? I think we've got a CHXWV. Now, I'm going to assume that probably stands for something or is supposed to be pronounced a certain way. But for now, that is what I'm going to say. Looky Lou, the truth of life. I would say if they want to create more momentum, because I think there's a lot of momentum to be had right now that will force the hands of the two major parties, yes, I would agree that if they were to coalesce, that would actually create more momentum. The problem, of course, is that even in the third-party political realm, there is still a lot of dissent and egos and a lot of things that, unfortunately, are not going to change anytime soon. And that is the whole point about building these coalitions. And this is what it's all about. So let's keep fighting that good fight. Figure out a good plan for Monday. A good guest. Got a lot cooking right now. The election is in less than 6 weeks. It'll be here before you know it. So if you're involved and want to continue to be involved, make sure that you keep spreading the word because it is essential. But it can happen. Jen can absolutely pull this off. We need more help. Go to gen2024.org to contribute or sign up. Phone banking is necessary. It's not what it used to be, but it is still necessary. And of course, we need door knockers that are here in South Florida. That's a big part of it. And keep sharing on social media. And if I have not emphasized this enough, I'm going to emphasize it now. We have posts that go out all the time. If you guys are not currently following on social media, make sure that you get over there and make sure that you are liking, commenting, and sharing the posts because that goes a long way. And so Jen is at Jen4FL25. Follow her on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Yes, I will send my good friend Jordan Chariton my best. Got to kick that stupid COVID. Stay healthy, my friends, as best you can. And with that said, appreciate you all. I did. I grew up with Italians, Tony. I better know how to say it right. So, as I said, you guys are great, and this show is definitely necessary, especially right now. Hope you enjoyed. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things I would ask you to do, and we'll see you Monday.